So we're here with the Startup Hub, and I'm delighted to welcome Chris Haley from Nesta. Chris is head of startups and new technology research at Nesta. And welcome to the Startup Hub.
Thank you.
We're here to talk a bit about some of the predictions that you made in 2016 as Nesta, and some of the forward predictions you've got for 2017. But before we do that, Chris, it might be useful just for some of our listeners to just position Nesta and just explain a little bit about what Nesta's all about.
Sure. So Nesta is the UK's innovation foundation. Our mission is to help people bring great ideas to life, and startups are a crucial part of that. We believe that entrepreneurs are truly agents of innovation, so we are trying to understand how to support startups and what kinds of things really matter to entrepreneurs.
I mean, 2016, on the face of it, we can look back and it was actually a great year for startups in the UK. I mean, London, all of the reports would suggest a lot of investment. I think the last report I looked at said that there was more than 2 billion investment picked up by startups in London alone in the first half of 2016. But obviously, some of the research that's come out, I've seen an EY report that says that the UK as a whole is still the sort of choice place to go for digital businesses. What's your perspective from Nesta on last year and the UK's position as a whole?
So I'd say that the UK is really a very good place for startups. We have conducted some of our own research called the European Digital City Index, where we've compared a number of cities across Europe. And really, there are many UK cities that I think stand out very well. Part of the reason for this is the UK in general has very good access to capital, and we have a very good entrepreneurial culture. We also have pretty good access to skills. I mean, many of the world's top universities are based here in the UK, and all that contributes to a very positive environment for startups.
I mean, the second half was probably characterised by the Brexit announcement, and that initially put, I think, a lot of doom and gloom into some of the startups in the community generally. But what's kind of the take? Because I've seen, some positive signs. I mean, just in, say, the legal space, we're starting to see some very interesting organisations and startups coming out of that space, acknowledging obviously the amount of work that's going to have to happen to achieve a Brexit.
So one thing I would say is that one of the advantages of startups, and in fact, in some cases, the only advantage of startups, is their ability to pivot quickly. Startups are much better than large established corporates at reacting to a rapidly changing environment and other disruption. There is one view which actually says that a slightly unexpected environment, a sort of sense of uncertainty, is actually going to be more beneficial for startups than established businesses.
So last year, and Brexit probably wasn't one of them, but Nesta made a number of predictions around trends and technology trends. I was quite interested just to get a view of how those panned out. Particularly, there was some around kind of digital health and the use of personal data, some of the changes in the banking sector, and things like that. What was your take on the predictions from last year, and any particular trends that you did see that were favourites of yours?
What we saw in 2016 were a number of trends really that were quite global in nature. When it came to finance, one of the things that we picked up on was that of crowdfunding and alternative finance. And this is an area which really does continue to grow very, very rapidly. We are seeing treble-digit growth in the UK for different sorts of alternative finance. This is, I think, something that's going to continue for a number of years yet.
And what other ones caught your eye? I was certainly intrigued by the Splinternet prediction as well. Maybe worth explaining just a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so the Splinternet prediction, I think, is an example of one of the predictions that Nesta makes, not because we necessarily think that it will happen or because we hope it will come true, but in a way we're putting that there as a bit of a warning. So what we're saying is that if certain trends continue as they have been for a little while, what we might see is essentially the internet as we know it splintering into a number of smaller internets that are kind of closed off from each other. You can see this to an extent in China. The Great Firewall of China is clearly the best known example. But if we're not careful, what we may see is similar examples cropping up all over the world.
So moving on to 2017, again, Nesta have made some predictions, 10 predictions for 2017, and quite a mix of different types of things, which were quite intriguing. But which were a couple of your favourites, and why do you think they're going to be things that proliferate in 2017?
One of the things that we have forecast for 2017 has been an increase in adult education, kind of looking again at the notion of lifelong learning. One of the reasons why we think this is so important is because of trends in automation and changing the changing nature of work, right? It's quite clear that automation is encroaching into areas where we basically didn't see it affecting maybe 5 years ago. And what that means is that in maybe another 5 years, there'll be a number of people essentially put out of work by automation. Now, our view is that one shouldn't fight that, that one should actually embrace automation, but as a society, we should look at ways of retraining and reskilling those people who are put out of work by automation and machine learning.
So what are your predictions around future sectors that might be disrupted over the next 2 or 3 years?
It's a very difficult question. I think if you'd asked me that a year or two ago, I would have probably said industry and building and construction. But of course, we have seen digital really enter every single sector. What I would probably say is look towards those sectors that are currently considered boring or unsexy. That will be where I think we will probably see the kind of revolutionary technologies.
Any other predictions from 2016, Chris, that really came forth and but maybe surprised you?
One of the predictions that we made in 2016 was that cybersecurity for IoT would become even more important. Unfortunately, what we saw in 2016 was the Mirai botnet of basically unsecure IoT devices causing havoc across the world. So that's a prediction that came true. We wish it hadn't.
And do you think there's a consequence for that in 2017 and 2018 moving forward that you could predict?
Yes, I think it's very clear that we will have to take security of connected devices more seriously than we have done to date.
So I guess one last question before we go, Chris. I was going to ask you about the report that Nesta did last year on corporates and startups, which we were delighted when Cisco came through on top of that last year, but it was interesting just seeing the amount of corporates that we recognise within that name. What's your perspective on startups and corporates going into 2017 and the future?
So our view is that the area of corporate startup collaboration is really one where there is a tremendous potential for mutual benefit here. I mean, on the corporate side, I think many corporates struggle to innovate, and working with startups is a great way of bringing innovation into the company. On the startup side, there's clearly huge benefits that corporate collaboration can bring, including routes to market, investment, and so on. I think this is a trend that's definitely going to continue for the foreseeable future. It's notable that in the 2017 industrial strategy that the government just published, there was a clear line there for encouraging supply chain partnering and collaboration of this sort. So I think firmly that this is something that's going to continue for a number of years to come.
Good stuff. Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.